At my grandson's wedding, just as the reception was beginning and the speeches were being arranged, my daughter-in-law leaned in close to my son and whispered something sharp and cold. "Please don't let her speak," she said. "She always makes it about her. She didn't know I heard her." She didn't see the way I froze for just a second, like a splash of ice water had been poured down my back. She turned back to her wine, smiled at a guest, adjusted her bracelet. But I heard every word. "My name is Camilla. I'm 72 years old, a widow, a mother, and, most importantly, that day, the grandmother of the groom, my grandson." Leo was getting married, and the entire event was beautiful in that overproduced kind of way that meant Jenna. My daughter-in-law had orchestrated every moment like a movie set. Everything had to be perfect, curated, impressive. But none of it felt warm, not like family. I had arrived in a soft blue dress my husband Charles gave me on our last anniversary before he passed. I kept it wrapped in tissue for years. That morning, I wore it for him. It felt like bringing a piece of him with me. Charles would have loved today. He adored Leo. That boy was his pride. Leo is the only person in our family who ever asked me how I'm doing and really waited for the answer. The only one who brought flowers on the anniversary of Charles's death. The only one who visits just to talk. When Leo asked me if I'd speak at the wedding, I didn't hesitate. "You're the soul of this family, Nana," he told me. "You always tell the truth. Say something real." I had prepared something. Not my words exactly, but a letter. One Charles had written. A letter I'd kept sealed for nearly 2 years. The envelope read, "For Leo on his wedding day." Charles had handed it to me from his hospital bed with trembling hands and eyes that held no fear, only love. "When the day comes," he said, "read this to him. It's not just a letter, it's my legacy." So when Jenna whispered those words, when she told my son not to let me speak, because I make it about me, she had no idea what she was really silencing. She thought I'd embarrass her, or cry too long, or steal a moment from her perfect production. She didn't realize I wasn't there to talk about me at all. Nathan, my son, looked over at me then. His eyes flicked to mine for the briefest moment. I saw the conflict in his face. It's always been like that, stuck in the middle, trying to keep peace no matter what it costs. He turned back to Jenna and gave her a small nod. It's just like that. My name was quietly removed from the speech schedule. No one told me. They just moved forward. The DJ was setting up his booth. Champagne glasses clinked. A slideshow of Leo and his new wife Aria played on a screen behind the head table. I sat quietly, my hands folded on my lap, the letter resting in my purse beneath the table. I looked around the room and tried to swallow the disappointment. But the thing is, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. This wasn't the first time Jenna had tried to push me out of my own family story. Over the years, she'd done it 100 small ways. Christmas invitations that came late. Family pictures where I was cropped out. Decisions made without my knowledge. She didn't want me to be a part of Leo's day. That much was clear. But she had made one very important mistake. She underestimated me. Leo caught my eye from across the room. He smiled. That kind of full-face smile that makes his dimples show. The same dimples Charles had. It gave me courage. I didn't stand up. Right then, not yet. That would come later. But I made a decision. I would speak. Not because I needed to be heard, but because Charles deserved to be. He had something to say. And even from beyond this world, his words still mattered. Jenna could silence me, but she couldn't silence him. Not today. Not at his grandson's wedding. I met Charles when I was 19. He was 21, the son of a grocer with a teacher's heart and the patience of a saint. We married in the fall of 1975 under a canopy of orange leaves in my father's backyard. No fancy venue. No catered buffet. Just a potluck, a violinist, and the kind of laughter that makes your ribs ache. We built our lives brick by brick, literally. The house we lived in for 42 years was one Charles helped design. He spent weekends sanding the banister with Leo on his lap, or laying tile while our son Nathan pretended to supervise with a toy hammer. Every inch of that home held a memory. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and wet leaves. The hallway echoed with Charles's Sunday morning jazz records, and the backyard had a garden full of roses he planted just for me. He called them Camilla's breath, soft, pink, and stubbornly in bloom. Even in October, when Charles passed, I didn't cry at the funeral. I smiled through it. People mistook that for strength. But the truth is, I felt hollow, like my Nimitni. I felt hollow, like my Nimitni, like a scanner app, and it's like you're gonna die. Like, look at this, and we look at this. And we all know I've been exploring. With Nimitni, with Ni. Be with Mistwar, that, by Ni. But with Minitni, with Sinkal, with Sin Me. With Minitni, with Sin Ni Mob. At Minitni. I comet with Fidni, with Sinni, with Sinni, with Sini, with Sini, eek, with Sinni to sick. Body had stayed, but the rest of me was buried beside him. The first few months were quiet, almost frighteningly so. Nathan would call once a week, Jenna maybe once a month. They offered to have me move in with them, but I knew it was out of obligation. Jenna has always kept her distance. There was never a fight. Just this subtle chill, like I was a guest. In my own son's family, Nathan and Jenna married 12 years ago. I tried to get to know her at first. I really did. I invited her to lunches, bought her books I thought she'd like. Even offered her Charles's mother's pearls as a wedding gift. She never wore them, said she was more of a modern girl. That was the last time I tried to offer anything sentimental. When Leo was born, he changed everything for me. I held him the day he came home from the hospital. He fit in my arms like a secret. As he grew older, he'd sneak me drawings of pirates and dragons and say, "You're the queen, Nana. The dragon listens to you." I don't know what made us so close. But maybe he saw something in me the others didn't. Or maybe I let him. Every Sunday, Leo would come over for breakfast, just the two of us. We'd make pancakes, then sit in the den and read old mystery books together. When Charles got sick, Leo was the one who visited the most. He'd sit next to his grandpa and read to him, or just hold his hand. When Charles passed, Leo helped me box up his sweaters and kept one for himself, a navy cable knit with a tiny hole in the elbow. So when Leo told me he was getting married, it felt like a piece of good news in a season of silence. I remember the call clearly, Nana. I asked Arya, and she said yes. I cried, but tried to keep it light. Well, she must be smart. He laughed and said, "We're getting married at that big vineyard just north of town. It's going to be gorgeous. But I want one part of it to feel like home. Will you say something? A toast? A memory? Something real?" "Of course I will," I said, and I meant it. But I also knew the battle lines in this family. Kenna had already planned everything. The dress code, the signature cocktail, even what songs would be allowed. I suspected she wouldn't be thrilled about me holding a microphone. I thought, just this once, she might let me be part of the moment. I spent weeks thinking about what to say. I couldn't find the right words. Then, one day while cleaning out a drawer in the bedroom, I found it, the envelope Charles had given me, still sealed, a little yellowed around the edges. I held it to my heart and remembered exactly what. He told me, "Don't open it unless you feel ready. But promise me, if I'm not there when Leo gets married, you'll read this to him." I packed the letter carefully in my purse the morning of the wedding, right next to a photo of Charles, holding Leo at age 5. They were both smiling wide, smeared with blueberry pie. I looked at that photo and whispered, "I'm bringing you with me." I walked into the wedding that day feeling nervous but peaceful. I wasn't there to compete or show up, Jenna. I was there to fulfill a promise, one made in a hospital room, spoken with a hand squeeze and a trembling voice, as I sat down at the reception table, placing my purse gently beside me. I had no idea the quiet act of keeping a promise would turn into the most unforgettable moment of Leo's life and the most humbling one of Jenna's. But the wheels had already begun to turn. The vineyard was breathtaking. Rows of gold-dusted grapevines stretched out in every direction, a warm September breeze stirring the leaves just enough to rustle. There was a string quartet playing on a small stage under a tent, guests sipping champagne from tall, thin glasses. Everything wrapped in the soft glow of fairy lights. It looked like something out of a magazine, and it didn't feel like home. I arrived just as the ceremony ended and the cocktail hour was beginning. Leo looked handsome and calm in his navy blue suit, Arya radiant in a simple satin gown. I hugged him tightly when I saw him. "You made it?" he said, grinning. "Of course I did. I wouldn't miss this for anything." He leaned in and whispered, "You brought it, right?" I tapped my purse, safe and sound. He looked relieved. "I can't wait. It's the one thing I didn't tell Arya about." That made me smile. Leo had always been a little mischievous in the gentlest way, and I could see that Arya brought out the best in him, kind, thoughtful, someone who loved him with the same softness Charles once showed me. We took photos under an arch of white roses. There were formal ones, silly ones, group ones, awas, in a few, not many. Jenna mostly placed herself in the center of each frame. I didn't push. I've learned not to, as dinner was served. I took my seat at the family table just next to Nathan and across from Jenna. The room buzzed with conversation. Jenna was laughing with one of Arya's aunts when she leaned toward Nathan and dropped her voice. "Please don't let her speak," she said. Nathan paused, glanced sideways. "She always makes it about her," she added, tapping her napkin. Against her lipstick, "It's not the time." I didn't flinch, didn't say a word. But I heard her, clearly, and I watched Nathan nod without argument. In that moment, I felt something twist inside me, not quite rage, not exactly sadness. It was something older than both, something familiar. It was that same sinking feeling I used to get when I'd cook dinner for the whole family and Jenna would say, "Oh, we're doing traditional food again." Or when I gave her Charles's old books for her birthday and she left them behind in our guest room. It was that slow erosion, the way someone chips at your presence until you're just background noise in your own life. Jenna turned toward me and smiled like she'd just offered me a slice of cake. "Camilla," she said sweetly, "we had to shorten the speech list a bit. We're tight on time with the band and everything. Hope that's okay." I looked at her, that perfect, polished face with her carefully curled hair and pearl earrings, and I smiled back. "Of course," I said. "Thank you for letting me know." She turned away without a second glance, confident she'd won, but she didn't know what I carried in my purse. She didn't know that the words I held weren't mine, that I wasn't there to give a speech. I was there to deliver something sacred, something her need for control couldn't stop. I didn't need to be on her schedule. I didn't need permission. As the plates were cleared and the servers began pouring sparkling wine, the DJ tested his microphone. It was almost time for the toasts. First came Arya's father, warm, a little emotional. Then Jenna's sister, chirpy and polished, filled with inside jokes. Then Nathan, he kept it short. Too short. He said something about Leo being his own man now, and mentioned how proud he was. No mention of Charles, no mention of me. It's just a polite applause and a retreat to his seat. I folded my hands in my lap and stared at my plate. Leo looked confused. He glanced over at me from across the table. He mouthed, "What happened?" I shook my head gently, but the look on his face broke me. This wasn't about Jenna anymore. This was about Leo, about Charles, about family, real family, and the legacy that Jenna was trying to bury under calligraphy menus and centerpiece budgets. I felt the letter inside my purse like it was alive. I didn't stand up yet, but I would in just a few minutes. When the toasts were done and the music was about to play, I would rise, and Jenna's world, her perfectly arranged, tightly controlled world, would shift. Because she didn't realize something very simple. You don't silence someone who has nothing left to lose, and you never, ever silence a voice that speaks the truth. The toasts ended. There was a brief silence, the kind that settles in when people think the program is over and they're ready to move on to dancing. More drinks, to the photo booth with its props and glittery backdrop. The DJ cleared. His throat leaned into the mic and said, "Let's give a big round of applause to the newlyweds." People clapped politely. Some whooped and cheered. A few began rising from their chairs. Leo didn't move. He looked at me again, his eyebrows furrowed, a trace of confusion still on his face. That sweet, steady face. His mouth moved just enough to ask again what happened. I gave him a smile that said, "It's okay." And then I stood up. My chair scraped softly against the wood floor. Not loudly, but just enough to turn a few heads. I picked up my purse, reached inside, and pulled out the envelope. It was thick ivory paper, hand-addressed in Charles's blocky handwriting. It felt heavier than it looked. Jenna noticed me first. Her smile dropped so fast it was almost comical. She reached for Nathan's arm. "Stop her," she hissed. But her voice cracked halfway through. Nathan looked up at me, his face pale, unsure. But he didn't move, and I didn't wait. I stepped toward the front of the room, toward the little area where the toasts had been made. The DJ looked confused. He started to speak again, but I raised one finger. "Just one more," I said calmly. "If you don't mind." The room quieted. Not all at once. It came in waves, one table at a time. People began turning, looking toward me. Some smiled, some were curious. And a few, especially at Jenna's end of the family, looked deeply uncomfortable. I didn't need their comfort. Leo's eyes widened when he saw the envelope. His mouth parted slightly, like he suddenly understood. "This isn't a speech," I said. "It's a letter. One that was written by someone who should have been here today. My husband, Charles." I held the envelope gently in both hands. "Before he passed, Charles asked me to deliver this on Leo's wedding day. He didn't know when that would be. He didn't know if I'd still be here. But he knew this day would come. I invited his words, not mine, to be part of it." I took a breath and opened the envelope. The room had gone completely still. "I know weddings are about celebration," said, glancing up briefly, "but they're also about history, about the people who shaped us, and Charles. Well, he shaped all of us." The letter began simply, "Leo, if you're hearing this, means you've grown into a man brave enough to love and be loved back. And that means I did something right." There were a few soft laughs. A few sniffles. I kept reading. Charles wrote about watching Leo as a boy, how he saw so much of Nathan in him, but also something gentler, something truer. He wrote about Aria, even though he'd never met her, how he trusted Leo would find someone who saw him fully. And then came the part that changed everything. There are people in this family who see love as a resource to be rationed, who treat legacy like property to be defended. That's not what I believe. Legacy is meant to be passed on with open hands, which is why, with full intention, I leave the house to you, Leo, the one we built, the one with the red swing and the roses for your grandmother. I paused. People weren't just listening now. They were leaning in. Jenna's face had drained of color. Her hand gripped the stem of her wineglass so tightly I thought it might snap. I continued reading. "Not because you are the oldest or the most successful, but because you are the one who listened, who showed up, who reminded me that being seen, truly seen, is what keeps a family alive." I finished the letter, folded it gently, and held it against my chest. Charles didn't ask for applause. He asked for me to keep a promise, and now I have. I stepped back. For a moment, no one moved. Then Leo stood. He didn't rush. He walked slowly, deliberately, all the way to where I stood. He wrapped his arms around me, held me tight, and whispered, "Thank you for keeping him here." When he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. "You're the only reason this feels like home." Applause broke out. Not everyone clapped, but it didn't matter. The ones who mattered did dot behind Leo. Aria's hand was over her heart. She mouthed, "That was beautiful." Jenna was frozen in place, her expression unreadable, her mouth tight, her eyes unfocused. She had lost her script. The control, the image, the spotlight, all gone, replaced by something far more real. And I hadn't said a word about myself. I had simply honored the man who built this family and passed that love to the one who deserved it. After I stepped down, I didn't return to my seat right away. I stood near the side of the room, still holding the folded letter in both hands. I could feel the weight of what had just happened in the silence that followed. It wasn't heavy. It was cleansing. Like someone had opened all the windows in a house that had been sealed shut for years. Leo was still beside me, one arm loosely around my shoulder. The crowd began to stir. Arya reached out and took Leo's other hand. Her eyes were red but steady. She kissed his cheek softly. That one small gesture felt more genuine than anything I'd seen all day. Then Jenna stood up. Her movement was sharp, stiff. She pushed her chair back a little too hard, scraped loudly against the floor. A few people turned toward her. "I'd like to say something," she said. The DJ, clearly unsure of what to do, handed her the microphone. She took it, adjusted her dress, and turned to the room with a wide smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, that was a surprise," she said, forcing a light laugh. "A very emotional moment. Thank you, Camilla, for your words. And Charles's, of course." She looked toward me briefly. Her smile stayed in place, but it cracked ever so slightly at the corners. I said nothing. I didn't need to. The room already knew. "I think what matters most," Jenna continued, "is that we focus on the future. On what's ahead for Leo and Arya. Not on the past, and certainly not on property." There it was. She couldn't help herself. She had to try to take control again. Steer the moment away from something she hadn't created, hadn't polished, couldn't predict. But the guests weren't following her this time. Most were watching her politely. A few were exchanging glances. I could see Arya's parents in the second row. Her mother shook her head gently. Jenna was losing them. She looked down at her note cards, clearly rattled, then gave up on them altogether. "Anyway," she said, "what a beautiful evening. Let's raise our glasses and toast to the couple." She lifted her glass halfway, expecting everyone to follow. They didn't. Instead, Leo stepped forward. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't raise his voice. Okay? Just spoke. "I think my grandfather's words were the real toast," he said. "And I think it's okay that today wasn't perfect. 'Cause love isn't perfect. It's honest. It's what he taught me." Then he turned to me again. "Nana, will you come sit with us at the head table?" It took me a second to realize what he was asking. Jenna's head snapped toward him. Her jaw tensed. "That's not how the seating was arranged," she said under her breath, loud enough for only a few to hear. Arya looked at her and said, "We're rearranging it." Leo held out his hand. I took it. We walked to the head table together. He pulled out the chair beside his and waited until I sat down before. He did. Arya smiled and poured me a fresh glass of champagne. Jenna didn't speak again for the rest of the evening. She sat beside Nathan, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his suit jacket. He didn't say much either, but the guests came by. They shook my hand, thanked me for the letter, told me stories about Charles I hadn't heard in years. Arias. Uncle said I didn't cry at my own daughter's wedding, but I cried today. A woman I didn't know hugged me and whispered. My grandmother would have done the same thing. As the sun set and the lights around the vineyard glowed brighter, the dance floor filled. I stayed seated, content to watch. Leo and Arya swayed to a slow song under the stars, his arms wrapped protectively around her. When the song ended, he came back to the table and crouched beside me. "I know she didn't want you to speak," he said. "But this whole night would have felt empty if you hadn't." I looked at him and saw every stage of his life in his face. The boy with frosting on his nose at his 5th birthday party. The teenager reading Dickens with a flashlight during a power outage. The man standing here now with integrity, tenderness, and strength. "You filled the room with something real," I told him. "It's more than most people ever do." He kissed my cheek, stood, and returned to the dance floor. For the first time in years. I felt whole. I had kept a promise. I had spoken the truth. And in doing so, I had shifted something far more lasting than a wedding speech. I had restored a legacy and made sure the right heart carried it forward. The next morning, the vineyard was quiet. Few folding chairs still sat clustered near the back terrace. Petals from the floral arch scattered across the grass. I walked the edge of the property before heading home, just needing a moment with the silence. The letter from Charles was back in my purse. I hadn't let it go far from me, even after reading it. Somehow, it felt like he was still close, watching the whole thing unfold the way he always did quietly, with that thoughtful little smile and warm, approving eyes. When I returned home, the house felt different, not because anything had changed physically. The furniture was the same, the photos still on the mantel, the kitchen light still buzzing faintly when I turned it on. But the air had shifted, lighter somehow, like some long-closed window had finally opened. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a small arrangement of gardenias and tulips, my favorites wrapped in brown paper, tied with a silk ribbon. A card was tucked inside. It read, "Thank you for keeping his voice alive. His home will always be yours too. Love, Leo and Aria." I stood there for a long moment, pressing the card to my chest. I didn't cry. I just let myself feel it. Later that evening, I received a call. It was Nathan. He cleared his throat before speaking, something he always did when he felt awkward. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Nathan." There was a pause. I just wanted to say, I should have stopped her. Didn't answer immediately. "She was wrong," he continued. And I knew she was. I didn't want to make it worse. I thought staying quiet was keeping the peace. But I realize now it wasn't peace. It was silence, and it cost too much. His voice cracked slightly. "I'm sorry," he said. I sat down at the kitchen table and looked out at the garden. The roses were blooming. A few late ones had opened, soft and pink, stubborn as ever. "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." We didn't say much else, but sometimes the apology is enough. Sometimes it's the first brick laid in a broken bridge. Jenna didn't call. She didn't text. And I didn't expect her to. But I heard from others. Aria called me later that week and invited me to brunch. "Just us. I want to hear more about Charles," she said. "And about you. I feel like I never got to know you the way Leo does." That warmed something in me that had gone cold over the years. It wasn't just about being heard. It was about being seen, finally, fully, without the filter of someone else's version of who I was supposed to be. For so long, I had shrunk myself to keep things easy. I had accepted half invitations, tolerated quiet dismissals, and kept memories sealed in drawers because I was afraid they didn't matter anymore. But the truth is, they do dot what we remember, what we pass down, how we speak when we're told to. Stay silent. Those are the things that shape legacy. Not inheritance, not titles, not seating charts. What Charles left wasn't just a house, it was a home. And he left it to the one person who carried it in his heart long before it was ever written into a will. That was the real gift. And the real lesson. Some people build walls. Others build bridges. Charles built both, but he gave me the key to choose who walked across. I think about that now. Whenever I step out into the yard and see Leo's car pulling up, Aria in the passenger seat, a bag of pastries in his hand. Brings them every Sunday now, just like old times. We sit in the garden. We talk. We laugh. We remember Charles not as someone lost, but someone still guiding us in small, deliberate ways. Last week, Leo asked if I'd help them plan their first holiday dinner in the house. "We want to do it right," he said. "Not just perfect, real." And for the first time in a very long while, I felt like I belonged. Not because I fought for a place, but because someone finally made space for me. So no, I didn't make the wedding about me. I made it about the truth, and the truth, once spoken, has a way of taking root. Just like those roses Charles planted all those years ago. It's good. They never stop blooming, no matter who tries to dig them up. If this story touched you or reminded you of someone in your life who made sure the truth was heard, share it. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice matters. And if you've ever had a moment where you've stood up when everyone expected you to sit down, I'd love to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. I read every one. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Your support helps bring real, emotional stories like this to life. Thanks for listening, and remember, some legacies are louder than words.